All right. You know my guest as the voice of the Washington Wizards for 22 years. You can hear him now on his podcast, On the Road with Buck and Phil, with his longtime broadcast partner, Phil Chenier. It is an absolute honor to be joined by Steve Buckhantz. Steve, how are you, sir?
I'm great, Justin. It's great to be here. I'm glad you're having me on, and it's nice to talk to you.
Absolutely. So your podcast, On the Road with Buck and Phil, it is fantastic. The DC area fans were obviously thrilled when you started it up last year. Can you talk to me a little bit about how like On the Road kind of came to be, and just how excited you were for you and Phil to have a voice again?
Well, I mean, that's really why we did it, so that Phil and I could have a voice again and just have fun. I mean, we were together for 20 years. I did 20 with Phil and 2 with Kara Lawson. And so Phil and I obviously became very close friends. And when we finished our broadcasting, I felt like something was missing. And I know that fans like yourself and fans that are listening to your podcast, real diehard Wizards fans, kind of wanted to hear from us. And we said, you know what, let's do this to have fun, certainly not to get rich, but to have fun, to have a voice again, and to be able to let fans know what we're thinking about with regard to the Wizards and anything else that might be going on in the sports world. And then also what was important to me was that it wasn't just me and Phil jabbering on about whatever it is we were talking about, but to have some kind of a impactful guest. And we knew that between the two of us, that between our Rolodexes, we could have some really good guests. We've been in the business a long time. I've been in broadcasting since college. So 46 years, 47 years. And Phil knows a lot of people too. So we felt like between the two of us, we could get some really good guests to enlighten and entertain our listeners. And I think we've done that. We've had some, starting with our very first guest, who was David Falk, who was Michael Jordan's agent for the longest time, a local guy here in DC. And that was right during the Last Dance. So we tried to get Michael, but he wasn't available for that. So we got the next best thing, which was Falk. And then we've had, all kinds of great guests, Mark Cuban and Ernie Johnson and Scott Van Pelt and the Sports Junkies and Michael Wilbon and, Earl Monroe. I mean, I could go on and on and on, Christine Brennan. And we've had 40, I think we've done 42 episodes. So we've had some good guests and it's been fun.
Absolutely. And Ish Smith is coming up this week, right?
He's on now. So
Gotcha.
He actually came out a day before I thought he would. And he was enlightening to talk to because obviously he plays for the team. So he can really speak to what the Wizards are going through and the transformation they've made over the beginning of the season when they weren't very good to now when they seem to be pretty good. He can really speak to that, and he did. So he's an interesting listen, and I enjoyed talking to him. So just one of the many guests that I think that have been insightful.
Absolutely. So I want to go back to you and Phil real quick. The relationship and just the chemistry you guys have on the air and even now, it's incredible. But there's a very funny story you told about the first time you and him interacted or met or whatever you want to call it back in the day on the podcast. Could you tell that story again? I love it.
Well, Phil is 5 years older than me. So when I was in college down at James Madison, Phil was in the NBA playing. And I really loved his style. Of course, I was a big Bullets fan. So, I loved him and I never made any bones about it. He's my second favorite Bullet of all time after Earl Monroe. Well, I used to referee locally in basketball, and I did in the Shenandoah Valley. In fact, I refereed with George Tolliver, whose daughter is Christy Tolliver, who was played at Maryland. And then George went on to become a great NBA referee. We used to referee together down there. And up here, I refereed in a league called the Urban Coalition League, which was a summer league in DC that sported the best athletes in the area, college and pro. So the Bullets had a team in there. Maryland had a team in there. Lots of really good players. We started out at Roosevelt High School in DC, which is where my father went to high school, believe it or not. And then we eventually moved over to Spingarn and whatever. So I started refereeing in that league, and I was young. I was just starting in college. And the Bullets had a team in there. And Phil was on the team, Phil Chenier and Truck Robinson and Kevin Greavy and Joe Pace and all these great old Bullets. And I'm refereeing and Phil is playing. And now, again, he's sort of now become my favorite Bullet. But we didn't know each other. And he turned around after I made a call and he called me a stupid MFer. And I let it slide because I'm thinking, I can't call a technical on my idol now, my favorite player. How can I do that? And then he looked at me. I didn't blow the whistle, and he looked at me and he called me the same thing again, twice in a row. And at that point I said, I got to do it. I got to whack him. And I gave him a technical. And that was the first time we ever really met. And who would know that, 30 years later, we'd be partners doing games. And I often remind him of that. I don't even need to remind him. He knows all about it. And he'll tell you he's never said anything to warrant a technical foul. But I'm living proof to tell you that he did. So that's how our relationship began. And like I said, I would have never guessed that 30 years later, we'd become best friends.
Absolutely. All uphill for there. Like when you guys started calling games together, how long did it take you to develop that friendship and that chemistry that was, carried out for several decades?
Yeah, it's a good question. I can tell you this, having watched him for years with Mel Proctor, that gave me a little bit of an advantage because I knew what he was like on the air and I knew what kind of personality and temperament he had. And then before we actually started working full-time together, we did a lot of games. I used to fill in for Mel Proctor when Mel would go do boxing or whatever. So I'd fill in and I did several games with Phil. And then the year that Mel Proctor left, which was 1996, he left the area because he had done Orioles play-by-play too. And he was a great announcer, one of my favorites. And he left here to go do San Diego Padres baseball. So they asked me and Dave Johnson to do the rest of the Bullets games that year, which we did. And that was the year that the Bullets got back into the playoffs when they played Michael Jordan's Bulls in a 3-game series and got swept in 3 games, but played really well. So I did at least one of those playoff games with Phil, and I had done a number of games leading up to that with Phil. So I kind of got used to him that way. And then at that time, was working in my 14th year at Channel 5, and I knew that I would love to do the Bullets games on a full-time basis. And I went to Susan O'Malley, who was the president of the team then, and we had a great relationship. And I said, listen, Susan, I'd like to do the games next year, all the games. And she said, well, what about Channel 5? What about ratings periods where they want you at the station, which is May and November, the big rating periods? I said, I am prepared to leave Channel 5 if I have to, because I want to do these games. And what I was hoping to do was stay at Channel 5 and do both. But Channel 5 wasn't about that at the time. They wanted their sports anchor to be there full time, and that's fine. And luckily, I wasn't under contract at the time. I was working without one. So I was able to say to Channel 5, okay, well, I'm going to go do the Bullets game, which I did. And so I left Channel 5 in September of 97. And in October, I started doing the Bullets full time. And it took, I felt really comfortable. Phil is so easy to work with. He's not a yelling, screaming, nutty, Dick Vitale, rah-rah kind of guy. He's a calm, collected guy, which is important because I feel like over the course of 82 games or more, which it generally was each season, you don't want somebody that's screaming and yelling you every night for all 3 hours a night. It'd drive you crazy. So I thought his delivery and his temperament was really easy. And really, that's the way he is as a person, too. His personality is that way. So we started right away. And I felt like, each year our chemistry got better and better. And you learn what guys are thinking, and they know what you're thinking, and you're not stepping on each other. And it didn't take long, I think, for us to have good chemistry. And then, listen, the other thing is that you got to genuinely like somebody if you're working with them. I mean, if you don't like somebody and doing that many games, I don't care what sport it is, it's probably going to show on the air unless you fake it really well. But even then, it's not fun. If you don't like somebody, you're not hanging out with them, you're not having a good time on the road and that kind of stuff. And we liked each other right away. We had everything in common, and that's the way we've been for probably 25 years.
Right, because your personalities, you guys you play off each other well, and it's a great dynamic. But There's a very funny dynamic now, especially on the podcast, when you guys are going back and you're talking about all your years of travel, hotel stories on the road. You're in so many luxury hotels when you're doing games for the Wizards. But even after knowing all of that, how did you start checking between the mattress and the box spring? Ever since you've said that, every hotel I've been to after, I take a peek just in case. Like, how did that start?
Buddy, I'm glad you're paying attention, that you get A+ for that. How did it start? I'll tell you how it started. And again, we stay where the team stays, and the team has it in their collective bargaining agreement where they can't stay anywhere less than a 4-star hotel. So they're not going to be in any Holiday Inns or any of those comfort. They're going to be in Ritz-Carltons or Four Seasons or the next best thing in case the city doesn't have one of those hotels. So that means you're staying, like you say, in a luxury hotel with a beautiful room and a beautiful bed and a comfortable mattress and all of that. Well, I happen to like a real soft mattress. And what hotels do all over the country, probably all over the world, when their mattresses start to get a little old or maybe sag a bit, underneath of the mattress, they put if it's a king-size bed, a king-sized piece of plywood. So what I would do was I'd always lift up the mattress to see if there was a piece of plywood there, because if there was, I'd pull it out. I didn't want it to be, I wanted it to be as soft as possible. And those things sometimes harden it up the mattress. So I would lift that thing up as heavy as it was and pull out this gigantic king-size piece of plywood and stand it up against the wall. I pitied the housekeepers that came in the next day that had to call in the engineers to get them to put that back. But that's where I started to find things under the mattress, unbeknownst to me or any other guests that may have stayed there before me. And I started finding the craziest stuff. Peanut shells, liquor bottles, cigarette boxes, water bottles, condoms, and of course, pornography, magazines. And I would find this under the mattresses in the nicest hotels in America, Ritz-Carltons, Four Seasons in Chicago. I mean, big time hotels. And it became comical to me, to the point where if I'd find something, I'd get right on the phone with Phil and I'd say, come on in here, get into my room, take a look at this. Or I'd call my other guys that I did the games with, our production crew. And then I'd call the general manager and say, hey, you might want to come up here and take a look under your mattress. And some of them would be astounded, like they couldn't believe it. And I'm saying, seriously? I'm finding this stuff all over the country. How can you not? You might want to have your maids check underneath here every once in a while, because that's what people are sleeping on. So that's how I did it. And then one day in New York City, believe it or not, and it wasn't at a Ritz or Four Seasons, it was another hotel, I hit the mother load. I pulled up the mattress, and there was a big king-size piece of plywood and a pornographic magazine sitting on top of it. 2 for 1. I couldn't believe it. That was the mother load to me. And of course, the GMs were like, oh my God, I can't believe this. What can we give you? We'll treat you to dinner. We'll, do this. And it's like, hey, brother, I don't even want anything anymore. I'm just happy to see, that I don't have to sleep on this.
It's fantastic. To this day, do you, if you go out and stay at a Holiday Inn, do you still every place you check it?
Everywhere I go, Holiday Inn, Comfort Inn, Ritz-Carlton, doesn't matter. I lift up the mattress just to see what's under there. And lately I haven't found anything. So I'm thinking maybe they've taken heed. Maybe the general managers have heard my spiel somewhere along the line, because a friend of mine was a very, very close, very high up guy with Ritz-Carlton. And I told him about it and he laughed and he said, dude, stop looking under the mattresses, and it's like, well, here's what I'm finding in your hotels. So maybe they got the word out. But yeah, I haven't found anything lately. But you never know, man. You never know what you're sleeping on. You may want to take a look under there.
Right. Because ever since I heard that episode, I do it. I haven't found anything yet, which is a little, I actually kind of want to see what's under there. But
yeah.
In your opinion, what is worse? Finding a whole bunch of junk under the mattress or having a room next to an elevator?
Which I also hate. I don't mind, the stuff I find under there, either I take it out or I call the GM and they come up and, the manager or whoever front desk, and they come up and take it out. Yeah, I would much rather have to deal with that than to be next to an elevator, an ice machine, or a housekeeping closet. Those are the 3 no-nos. And that's where I would try to get away from as far as possible whenever I go to a hotel. And I usually call up and talk to them before we get there and say, hey, can you put me in a corner room or away from the elevator, away from the housekeeping closet, away from the ice machine. One of the things I used to like to do after a number of years, the other thing that is a little pet peeve of mine, which is big, is I hate slamming doors,
Yes.
whether it's in my house or anywhere. I hate people that slam their door shut. And in a hotel room, I'd say 98% of people that stay there let their doors slam shut. And generally, a door, which in a hotel is on a braking system, so it will slow itself down. But usually about 6 to 8 inches before it gets to close,
Yep.
it lets loose and then it just crashes shut. And in some hotels, man, I'm telling you, it can jar you out of bed, and it drives me crazy. So what I would do is I'd get letterhead from the hotel, which you'd find in your drawer in the hotel, in your hotel room, or maybe in the business department. And I get letterhead, and then I'd write very neatly, or even maybe type ahead of time when I knew I was going to that hotel. For the comfort and privacy of our guests, please do not let your hotel room door slam shut. Thank you, the management. And then I'd put it like right outside the elevator so that everybody could see it. And then I used to wait to see how long it would be before somebody came and took it down. But in many cases, that got the point across, and people didn't slam their doors shut.
That is genius. Like the best part of your podcast, besides the whole thing is great, but the best part is the travel stories. I love every single time you and him go back and forth about those. But what's sad is that like broadcasters now, probably because of COVID, they don't get to experience the going on the road, the finding stuff between their mattress.
Yeah.
Like if you were in that position now and they're all doing everything from the studio, like how would you handle doing games off a monitor in the studio?
Well, we've done that before. Phil and I used to do that for summer league games when the Wizards played in the summer. And when, it was during the time when they were, in the playoffs, so they were popular enough that people wanted to watch summer league games, or at least it gave them some content to do so. And we would go into the studio in Bethesda at Comcast Sportsnet or NBC Sports Washington and call the games off the monitor. And I can tell you as a broadcaster, there's nothing worse than that. It's a horrible situation because you're not at the game, so you don't experience that whole atmosphere. But even more than that, you're at the mercy of the monitor in front of you and what's being shown on it. You have no way of voicing what you'd like to see. You can't go to the producer and say, hey, give me a shot of this guy who's working out on a practice bike in the tunnel. You're at the mercy of what's being shown. And when we did those summer league games, we took the feed from NBA TV. So it wasn't even our feed, it was their feed. And then we muted their announcers and used me and Phil. And again, you're at the mercy of what they're showing. We'd be talking, and they'd go to an interview, and they'd have two guys sitting there with a mic in front of them, and Phil and I would still be talking, because they're not talking to us and we're not talking to them. We don't know what they're getting ready to do. And plus you can't see what's happening on the floor. It's very difficult. Even after they moved Phil and I back up into the stands, that was really a challenge, and still is to this day. First of all, our eyesight ain't getting any better. So now we're having to look at the floor from 20 rows back. So you don't see a lot of the good stuff. But more importantly, you're not on the floor, so you can't communicate with the referees. You can't hear what the players are saying. You don't hear what the coaches are saying. It's very difficult. I would tell people once they moved us back, I'd say I got a better view of Venus than I do the court, and that's really the way it was for me. And all the guys that did the games, there's only about 5 arenas, maybe 6, where the broadcasters are up off the floor. Ours is 1, Philadelphia is 1, Charlotte is 1, the Clippers is 1, and in Houston, I think is 1. In Dallas, they have you just 1 row back. It's not bad. But most of the other ones, you're still on the floor. And of course, the network announcers, that's mandated by the league. They must be on the floor. Now, not for games after COVID. Nobody's on the floor now. There's no interaction between the announcers and the players anymore. They can't have that. So you're either doing it from the studio or you're doing it from the arena. And obviously from the arena, it's better because even though you're up, you're at the arena and you can see stuff. You can't hear what the guys are saying, but you can see stuff. In the studio, you're at the mercy of what your monitors. You're basically a fan calling the game off a monitor.
Do you think with like the faster paced sports like basketball and hockey that it's just like we as fans should give like the broadcast team a pass? Because in baseball, that's probably the easiest sport, I would have to think. It's so much slower. But even still in baseball, like the cameras and working off the monitors, I still find it funny that, you know, somebody hit a deep fly ball and they call it a home run and then it shifts and it's like, oh, it's just like on the warning track. Like, should we as fans be a little bit, you know, have a little more leniency for some of these guys calling games from like their basement?
Yeah, well, certainly if they're calling games from you know, like you say, their basement or their living room or whatever, and that's the other thing that I didn't address, but that's happening a lot now. I was fortunate, so I did some college games this year, and I did some Georgetown games, and that was at the arena at McDonough, and Maryland was at Maryland, so I didn't have to do it from my home, but a lot of guys are doing it from their home, so definitely, you know, but the problem is fans. Like even when they moved us 20 rows back, I used to talk to Ian Eagle about that, who does the Nets. And he'd say, fans don't care. The owners don't care. They don't know that you're 20 rows back when you're calling the game. They don't know that. Now, with COVID, it's a little different because if you're calling the game from your home, there can be a slight delay, a very slight delay because of satellites and that kind of thing in the transmission. And you can usually tell that. Sometimes it's a delay in the other way. Sometimes if the guys are in the arena, they're calling stuff almost a split second before it actually happens, or even a tenth of a second. And I can tell that. I don't think the average fan can. So yeah, I think we should give them a pass, especially if you're doing a game from your home or the studio. But the bottom line is fans don't care. They don't want to give you a pass. They expect the game to be called the way it's called. And truthfully, I don't think you can really tell the difference, which creates an interesting situation for the future. What's going to happen now are, you know, I can tell you that these companies are saving thousands of dollars by not sending the broadcasters on the road. They're saving the airfare, whether it's with the team or commercial. They're saving hotels. They're saving expenses and meals. So they're saving a tremendous amount of money. I believe this is the wave of the future. While it's much more advantageous for a broadcaster to be at the game and sitting close enough to be part of the action, it's much more advantageous for the company to save that money. And the bottom line is money.
You're obviously well connected in the broadcaster community. Have you talked to some of these guys about what it's like to do it the games like this? And do you think a lot of these guys would prefer to go out and travel, do the hotels and everything, just from that aspect of it? Do you think that's gonna be the part that they miss the most?
Yeah, it's interesting because one of the Georgetown games, actually, it was a Maryland game, Maryland and Minnesota, I did with Glenn Consor. But originally they had wanted Lenny Elmore to do the game, and I had done some games with him the previous years. Obviously went to Maryland. He lives in Maryland. He's a great guy and a great announcer, but he was not comfortable going to the arena. And that's where we were doing the game from. Now he does a lot of games from his home, as other broadcasters do. But he wasn't comfortable going to the arena, and he called me to tell me that. And I said, hey, I understand. Absolutely. My friend Dave Feldman, who calls games for ESPN, lives out in San Francisco. He does the games from his home. So they come in and they set up a whole thing in your home, a line and monitors and things that you can see the court. You can see your partner that you're doing the game with, who is doing it from their home. And I've talked to him about that, and it's not optimum, but it is what's happening now. And there are some guys that maybe enjoy it more that don't have to travel, because the travel, unless you're with a team, the travel can be, a little difficult, especially during COVID. And they're not sending a lot of guys around to travel. And, they're not sending me. I signed a contract with Fox to do these games. They didn't send me anywhere. It was strictly Georgetown and Maryland. So anyway, that's sort of what's happening. And some guys maybe don't mind it. Now, if you work for a team, you travel with the team. And that's as easiest travel you can ever imagine. That's complete hassle-free. They make it as easy for the athletes as humanly possible, which means it's easy for us. You travel on a beautiful plane with first-class seats. catering from Morton's or, PF Chang's or Cheesecake Factory, whatever it happens to be. And then you get off the plane and the bus is right there on the tarmac. You get on, you go to a 5-star hotel. I mean, it was a privilege and a blessing to do that for 22 years. But so if you work for a team, it's a little different. If you're working for like a network and you have to travel on your own, it's not as much fun.
Yeah, I can imagine. I want to talk about your broadcast style really quick. So I've heard you talk about the way you go about calling games. You've said that you're not afraid to call it like it is. If the Wizards were doing bad, you would probably, address that. At what point do you think you developed your broadcast voice, and what helped you shape it?
Good question. I've worked at 5 different TV stations, 6 if you want to consider Comcast Sportsnet a TV station, but 5 regular stations in 5 different cities. So I started in Harrisonburg, then I went to Chattanooga, then I went to Nashville, then I spent 3.5 years in Atlanta, and then came back here in 1984. And all along the way, I was doing freelance play-by-play, whether it was high school games or college games or whatever. And by the time I got to Washington, Channel 5 was the Big East station. So we televised all the Georgetown games. And that's when I started doing play-by-play for the Big East and for Georgetown. And then because of that, I did the play-by-play for the Naval Academy for football for 7 years. And it really, for me, it started from the guys I used to listen to. When I was in Harrisonburg in my first radio and TV job, I used to listen on the radio to a station called 3WE in Cleveland, WWWE Cleveland, 1100 on the AM dial. You could get it in 38 states and half of Canada. And they had a play-by-play guy who just passed away named Joe Tate, who was a great, I just loved his style. Maybe some people don't, but I happen to love his style. And I used to listen to him do play-by-play. I just thought it was so cool and so great. And then, and then of course, when I was growing up, it was Jim Carvelis who did the Bullets and then went on to do the Knicks. My favorite play-by-play announcer ever. He was the best and such a nice guy. He's passed away. And then Tony Roberts, who did the radio. He did Notre Dame football for years with, I think, Westwood One. He did the Bullets on the radio, and I loved his play-by-play. He was great. And I've gotten to know him and be friendly with him. He's such a good guy. But what a great voice he had for play-by-play. So those were the guys that sort of made influences on me. I'd like to think I have my own style, but you take a little bit of something from every guy you listen to. And then when I got to Atlanta, I was really enamored with Skip Carey, who did the Hawks and the Braves. And of course, his father was Harry Carey, and his son is Chip Carey. And so Skip sadly has passed away too, but he was I loved his style. It was very low key and almost sarcastic, but I loved the way he did games. And I got to obviously meet him because I worked in Atlanta, and he was such a cool guy to see. And so I would take little bits of all of these guys and kind of incorporate them into my style. But really, my style, I think, is my style. It is what it is. I don't get overhyped until it's time to get overhyped. I let the game percolate a little bit, and then kind of like a Broadway show, it reaches a crescendo at the end, and then you have a grand finale and all of that stuff. So that's sort of how I've done my own play-by-play. And I have guys that I think are great and that I love. And I have guys who other people think are great and they love, and I don't care for them. But, and I don't really talk about them. I do talk about the guys that I love, who I think are great. Al Michaels, obviously, and Ian Eagle, and Mike Breen, and, a lot of my colleagues and counterparts who do a great job. But I think I have my own style.
I love, obviously, your catchphrases. Your most iconic ones, everybody knows Dagger and Backbreaker. I think everybody kind of has their own idea of like what they mean. Like everybody has their own definition. But from the man himself, what is the difference between a dagger and a backbreaker?
Well, a backbreaker can happen virtually at any time during the game. And generally, to me, a backbreaker comes in a situation where the Wizards are playing defense. And man, they're playing great defense for 23 seconds. I mean, they're not giving the other team a chance to do anything. And it's a little more impactful when it's later in the game. And I don't usually call backbreakers early, but especially later in the game when it's more meaningful. And you've played 23 seconds of great defense, and then some guy throws up a shot and he banks it in or it goes in. that's a backbreaker, man, because it just broke your back. You just finished playing your ass off, and some guy hits a shot, and that's a backbreaker. A dagger, obviously, to me, now listen, you hear every announcer in every sport using it now virtually, especially in basketball. And a lot of them aren't using it the right way, but that's my definition of a dagger. And that is going to be generally, that's a game-winning play. Now it could be, a guy hits a shot with 30 seconds to play to give his team a 4-point lead. You'll hear an announcer say that could be the dagger. Okay, I get that. That's fine. But that's not how I use it. I use it at the end of a game when the Wizards hit a game-winning shot, whether it's Michael Jordan or Bradley Beal or, whoever it happened to be at the time, Gilbert Arenas in Chicago, John Wall. They hit a shot to win the game, and there's virtually no chance for the other team to come back. That's a dagger. Now, I've been burned before a couple of times calling a dagger too soon, which Chick Hernandez said was premature daggeration. And then because of where we were sitting, I called Trevor Ariza hit a shot against Detroit to win the game, and I screamed dagger, and the Pistons broadcasters are right next to me, George Blaha, and he said, "Oh, game, that's the game. The Wizards win." Well, the ball went under the rim, not in it, not through it. It came up short under the rim and glanced the net. The net popped up. And I mean, I've watched it 100 times, and every time it looks like that ball goes in. So I yelled dagger. Everybody on our side of the arena is screaming and yelling because they thought it went in. The Wizards won the game. And I don't see the Wizards celebrating. And my producer's in my ear, and he says, "I don't think the basket went in." I was like, oh, geez. He was right. The basket did not go in. Well, I was semi-vilified. I mean, even the next day on PTI, Michael and Tony were talking about it, and I got some grief for it, because here's the announcer, Mike Breen, called me and said, "Hey, man, don't worry about it. That happened to me in the Olympics once." Mike is as nice as a guy as you'll ever meet, classiest dude that I know, and a great announcer. But yeah, that happened to me with the dagger call. But that's how I have it. And listen, I've got the call trademarked, and to the point where it's trademarked for the use in broadcasts. So technically, I could tell everyone not to use it, but I don't want to do that. I'm happy to hear it. I just, when it comes to legalities, if it's used in a commercial or something that's making money, then I'm going to need to see some benefits from that. But anywhere else, I'm happy the guys use it. But I have had a trademark for several years.
I had no idea. I think if you were to trademark another one, it has to be, "Oh no, it's not possible."
And not possible.
Yeah, not possible. Yeah.
Like if I guess, although a lot of guys aren't using that, but everybody's using dagger.
If you're walking down the street and you're passing some fans who know who you are, like what's the most common thing? Is it you get a lot of daggers thrown at you?
Well, it's interesting. In the last year, I've only had 1 or 2 people recognize me because I'm wearing a mask. So if somebody recognizes you when you're wearing a mask, that's a real fan. But before that, yeah, you'd hear, you might be walking somewhere and you'd hear somebody scream dagger. Or if you're at the arena and there's a bunch of guys that have been drinking and it's after the game and you're walking around and they're still up in the suite drinking, you'll hear them screaming dagger and everything else. So that's sort of how that works. But otherwise, people are generally very nice. Even when I would meet somebody that I looked up to or whatever, you don't ever go up to somebody and say, "Hey, man, you suck." Normally you go up to someone and you say, "Hey, I really like your work. I like watching you." And that's what most people have done with me. Nobody's ever come up to me and say, "You're horrible" or whatever. Now with social media, it's a little different. People can write whatever they want. But again, even in social media, most people have been nice to me. And then after the situation with the way things ended with the Wizards, even now they're nice to me on social media. So I'm thankful for that and thankful to the fans for that. And I generally try to thank each one of them, whether it's socially where the public can see it or via direct message. I'll text people direct message and say, "Hey, thanks for the support."
I love it. All right, a couple more things. The Wizards this year, up and down. They started very bad. They had that 8-game win streak, that great game against the Lakers the other night. This team as a whole, it's hard to get a read on them, but like, what's your assessment bit of this team this year?
Well, listen, Phil and I talk about it, and we've talked about it for years, and it's a little bit cliched, but the word chemistry is very important. And we've seen it in all sports, whether it's the Capitals, the Nationals, the Washington football team, the year they brought in all those guys, Bruce Smith and Deion Sanders and everybody, they had no chemistry, so it didn't work. Same thing with the Wizards and basketball, year by year. You've got to develop chemistry. So early on, they've just come out of the bubble. So now they're starting just a few months after coming out of the bubble. They're trying to get used to Russell Westbrook. Guys are injured. It's piecemeal. It took them a few months to really understand how to play with each other. And now you see that and guys are healthy, but you see how they're understanding how to play with each other. Beal and Westbrook playing with each other, getting the big men involved, especially Lopez. Bertans with his shooting. Even guys like Garrison Matthews or Howell Neto. Hachimura his game is going to be great. Then you look at guys that they picked up like Gafford and Gill and some of these guys. They're all starting to gel. It's all about chemistry. It's all about playing hard. A lot of it is feeding off of Westbrook. He's amazing, that guy. I mean, he will stimulate you to play. And a lot of it's on the defensive end. So that the chemistry and also the increased effort on the defensive end is really the key for me. And then the health-wise, to be healthy. They're in a good spot right now. They got a lot of confidence. Ish Smith, all these backup guys they got are playing well. Their bench is playing well. I think it's going to be real interesting to see how they finish out these last 10 or 11 games, where they wind up in that playoff spot. And then I think they can beat, a team or two. I mean, who knows? Maybe they can beat more than a team or two. The East is a little weird right now. I mean, Philadelphia is a good team and Milwaukee's a good team, but I think any team can be beat. And look what the Wizards have done to teams in the West, the best teams in the West. So this is going to be real interesting.
Exactly. They're one of the most dangerous teams coming close to playoff time. Bradley Beal, the concept of wizard for life has been thrown around with a lot of guys. I certainly thought John Wall was going to be a wizard for life. Bradley Beal seems to be very open to the possibility of being a wizard for life. What do you think it would take to make Bradley Beal want to stay in DC for life? Because, in today's NBA, if he wants out, he could very quickly get out.
Yeah, easy answer to that question. Winning. If the team wins, they compete, they get near an Eastern Conference, title run, he'll be happy to stay. But at some point, even the best players get frustrated because the money is outrageous. None of us could ever fathom making that kind of money. But for these guys, that's what they do. And he's got more money than he'll ever need the rest of his life for the next 3 generations of his family. But at that point, it gets beyond money. It becomes the athletic competitive nature of these guys. They want to win. They're not out there to lose. They're out there because they've been competing their whole young lives. And that's what they do for a living at the very highest level. So he wants to win like everybody else does. And if this team can improve to the point where they're consistently winning like the Capitals do, then more and more players will come here and he'll be okay with staying here. If the team craps the bed, comes back next year and they're not good, which we saw a couple of years ago after they went and took Boston to 7 games, came back the next season and they were horrible. If that happens again or consistently, then he'll get too frustrated and he'll want to leave. But I admire the way he says, I want to be here. Now, look, every guy says they want to be here. Dwight Howard said he was going to finish his career here. Well, we know that was BS. So listen, you take all that stuff with a grain of salt. He's saying the right things, and that's what every athlete does and should do. But, I think he's a pretty sincere guy. In the meantime, his game I can't even believe how good he is. I knew he was good when they drafted him, but now he's, as Drew Gooden says during the broadcast, he's unguardable. I mean, that little step back move that he has gives him the ability to make shots or to take shots and make them. And his game is at a level that he is unguardable. He is as good a player as I've seen in a long time. He's not a shooter like Steph Curry is, but he's a great shooter. But he's got every move there is, and he's smart. And what I want him to do is stop complaining after shots. He complains after every call or non-call. He doesn't need to do that. He's too good for that. But he is an unbelievable player. I never thought he'd be that good. You don't think any player is going to be that good where they're unguardable.
All right, a couple more. What does this team need? So obviously there's a lot of holes on the roster, and even they're still good now, but there's obviously a lot of things missing. What's like the one big thing that you think is holding the Wizards back from taking it to a whole new level?
Well, I mean, look, every team needs shooters, but the Wizards, they talked about the fact they weren't a good 3-point shooting team. I don't know, man. I haven't really looked at their percentages, and I don't follow analytics. But between Bertans and Beal and Neto and Matthews, and they got some pretty good shooters. So I'm not worried about that. Big men, you don't have to have a big man anymore, but it helps. So, and now we have a rim protector with Gafford. I think he's done a good job with that. I think really for them, just more consistency on defense, really putting forth the effort to play defense like teams play in the playoffs. If you notice, every time you get to the playoffs, boy, defenses are ratcheted up. It's unbelievable. I don't care what team you're looking at, defense becomes a priority. And if they can do that over the course of 82 games, not going to happen every night. No team can play great every night, not even the good ones. But the good teams play great on a consistent basis, and that's what this team needs to do. So if they get it in their head that they can be a playoff team from the opening tip at the beginning of the season, and that they know they can be there by giving the effort on defense, then I think that they're going to be a consistently good team. They have never been a consistently good team. A year or two here, 2 or 3 there maybe, but that's it. So for them to be like San Antonio was forever, or Golden State, but even now you see what's happened to those teams. It all runs in cycles. Some cycles are longer than others, but I think that they can be a good, consistent team if they just put it in their head. And then they keep acquiring some of these other great players.
I love it. All right. Last question. I know me and all of my friends were super excited last year when you started calling some games for Georgetown, Maryland. Is that the plan for this upcoming year? Like, I'm just going to say it, Steve. I think sports are better when Steve Buckhantz is in the booth.
Well, that's nice of you, man. I appreciate that. Thanks. Yeah, I signed a contract with Fox to call some of these games on FS1 or FS2, whatever it happens to be. And generally they're local, they televise a lot of Maryland and Georgetown games. And then I did some James Madison games because they're nice enough to have me down to Harrisonburg. I did a game a couple of weeks ago with JMU against Richmond. And I've done basketball and football, although Kurt Dudley does the play-by-play and I do the color, which is a little unusual for me, but still fun. So yeah, that's the plan. I mean, unless an NBA team comes and offers me a job, but even then, look, this is my home. I live here. I'm not really, wouldn't be thrilled about having to move to Milwaukee or Cleveland or whatever to do games, even if it was just for 6 months. So I'm happy doing what I'm doing. I'm enjoying life, spending time with friends and family, being able to take trips and play golf when I want to, but still do a few games here or there. And that's really, after what I've been through over the last 46 years, that's really the ultimate way for me to kind of, to tail things off here at the end of my career. So thanks for saying that. I appreciate it. And yeah, I still like doing games. There's nothing better. But not having to do 82 of them every year is I'm finding out it's not so bad. I don't mind watching them.
I love it. Steve, thank you so much for your time and just everything you've done for the fans and the DMV and just the community in general. Check out On the Road, Buck and Phil, wherever you get your podcast. Ish Smith already out. And thank you so much. This was a lot of fun.
Justin, thank you, man. I appreciate it. It's great talking to you.